Hello again, beautiful people. It is me again, Dante King. I'm signing back on with purpose, of course. I didn't want to let this day go by without shining a light on a very monumental event that happened today. So there is an episode of the Black Trauma Podcast, which is hosted by Dr. Phillippe Doc Matthews. Again, that's Dr. Phillippe Doc Matthews. He has his own YouTube channel with over 60,000 subscribers. He and I had an opportunity to sit down and to do an interview together about the book. And so that interview, um, which dropped today, you can go on and locate it on his YouTube channel. Um, I'm actually going to show you where you can actually locate it, where you can locate the interview. But then I'm also going to um, share a part of the interview with you right here. So give me 1 second. If you go, we actually did two interviews. The first one was titled Malignant Diabolical Psychopathy, which is one of the key terms that I introduce in the book. Thanks to Dr. Danielle Marshall and Dr. Ruben Randall. Um, the second interview, so that the first interview dropped last week. The second interview dropped today, and the second interview is titled after my book, Diagnosing Whiteness and Anti-Blackness. So if you go on over to Dr. Phillippe Matthews' channel, Dr. Phillippe Shock Matthews, his YouTube channel, go ahead and subscribe. You can access this episode, Diagnosing Whiteness and Anti-Blackness. It just launched today, as you can see, 5 hours ago, and already it's been viewed by almost 300 people. So I'm going to play a clip of it here for all of you great, wonderful people. So I'll play a clip here, and then you can go and locate it on your own if you are interested in watching it. Okay, so give me 1 second. I'm gonna switch to the full screen, and here we go. I want to give a huge shout out to my brother, Dr. Phillippe Matthews. Thank you so much for the relationship and the bond that we've cultivated, and really the small amount of time that we've known each other. Of course, as I said to you, I followed your work. I've watched many of the interviews that you've done with different people. And I'm so grateful for such a time as this, that when my work is flourishing the way that it has been, the way that it is, that you still have your platform and that you opened up your platform to my work and to someone like me. I appreciate you tremendously. So here we go. I'm going to share part of the interview with y'all.
Hey, everybody. Welcome back to First Frequency of One to Shock Metaphysics. It's me, the Reverend Dr. Phillippe Shock Matthews, a.k.a. the Metaphysical Morpheus. And this is the Black Trauma Podcast. And he blew records and blew out the internet in our first session. And so I'm having him back. And we kind of threatened you anyway and told you he was going to be back because he's got a new book out. It has finally arrived, Diagnosing Whiteness and Anti-Blackness. Welcome back to the platform, my beloved Dante King. How are you?
I'm good, bro. It's great to be back. I was excited to see how that first episode did and how much people really acclimated to it and got a lot out of it. So thank you so much.
You are so very welcome and worthy of so much more. This book, this new edition, upgraded edition from the research that you did previously in the 400-year Holocaust, is absolutely insane in the membrane. Man, I could not. You know how I'm an academe, right? So in one sense, I'm a little pissed off because I'm like, I didn't write this. I should have wrote this. This is what I wanted to write. It was perfect. It was phenomenal. And I just want I want this in the hands of everybody, particularly Black people, but white people too, to understand exactly what's going on. So there's a lot to unpack with this book. Let me ask a generic question first, and then we'll get into the deets of the book moving forward. What made you decide that this was the book, this was the time, this was the level of research that you need to put this out, and the reason for the title of the book?
So, in the introduction of the book, I actually go into what made me write the book. And I think one of the pivotal moments for me was everything clicking. So I had been doing a lot of reading, a lot of studying, watching, interviews from people, from the past, Professor Dr. John Henrik Clark. I mentioned Albert Clegg, Dr. W.E.B. Du Bois, Dr. Francis Cress Welsing, Dr. Amos Wilson, many people that I had not necessarily engaged or was not aware of in terms of my primary education experience or primary educational experience. And even when I went to college and I assumed studies in the area of African American studies, and I graduated with a degree from college in African American studies, went on to pursue some graduate work in education. Um, I still had not been able to fully analyze and synthesize. The synthesis is what did it for me. And there was a moment as I was examining the colonial laws, and it clicked that number one, and I think I mentioned this the last time we spoke, but this is so much deeper than a group of people enslaving another group of people and then exploiting them. What you can see in the reveal of colonial level laws is this hyper focus on Black people. And I was going to ask you, I'm not sure if it's okay or appropriate for me to share maybe a slide deck that I use at conferences to kind of share with the audience.
You want to share that now? Let me give you sharing
Yeah.
capabilities. Absolutely. Are you kidding me?
Okay.
As they say, you had me at hello. Hold on a second. Let's see now. How do I do this? Okay, hold on. Host tools. There we go. Allow participants to share screen. You are up. Go
Oh,
for it.
wow. I appreciate that because I think many times some people can get lost in us talking around these
No
variables
doubt.
rather than
Sure.
giving them like an explicit example. So this is just one example, and it's a law that is enacted in Virginia concerning Black people and what Black people are allowed and not allowed to do.
Okay.
And this law was enacted because of the importation of many more African people that they were bringing into the shores of the coastline of Virginia at this time. And so they started to see Black people communing, eating together, many of which were from Angola. And so they spoke the same language in some cases, in many cases, actually. So I'll get to it. This act is preventing Negro insurrections. And so
Hold
why
on. We
would,
don't see it. Wait a minute. Okay, you started sharing the screen. Double
okay,
click to enter full mode.
okay,
Okay, wait. Hold on. Wait a minute now. Okay? There it is. Okay, now it can
okay.
come up now. Whoo! Don't
It
scare
just
me
take
like
a
that. Okay,
second.
here we go.
So
Go for it.
why would there need to be a law implemented preventing Negro insurrections? Well, because Negroes or Black people didn't take lightly the fact that they were being subjected to whippings and beatings and flogging, the fact that both people in the legal structure in the legislature, as well as everyday white people, had permission to both prostitute Black women, had permission to prostitute young Black girls, and engage in sex trafficking, human sex trafficking, and pedophilia, acts of pedophilia using young Black boys and Black girls as sex objects. The fact that Black people could not protect themselves against these types of very vile and cruel actions, predatory actions. And so they implemented this law preventing Negro insurrections. And so I want to examine this with you
if we
Please.
can, my brother.
Please.
So it says, whereas the frequent meeting of considerable numbers of Negro slaves under pretense of feasts and burials is judged of dangerous consequence, for prevention whereof for the future, be it enacted by the King's most excellent majesty by and with the consent of the General Assembly, and it is hereby enacted by the authority aforesaid, that from and after the publication of this law, it shall not be lawful for any Negro or other slave to carry or arm himself with any club, staff, gun, sword, or any other weapon of defense or offense, nor to go or depart from his master's ground without a certificate from his master, mistress, or overseer, and such permission not to be granted but upon particular and necessary occasions. A few things I want to point out about this initial portion of this law is that it's dealing with the movement, not just of people that they are classifying as slaves, because that slaves in that position, societal position, indicates a certain class of people, people who are in bondage, people who are exploited, people who labor for free under militaristic force, right? But they're also identifying Negro, which is another classification. And it is the classification or identifier that we still carry today. And so these laws are aimed explicitly against Black people, i.e., they are inherently anti-Black. And so America is founded upon an orientation of anti-Blackness, not just white supremacy. And I think this is so important to understand, because this is not only teaching white people how they should deal with Black people, but it's teaching indigenous people how they can deal with Black people and what's permissible in terms of enacting behavior or violent behavior against Black people. It's also shaping the cultural orientation that Black people come through. We are being given permission to be violent towards each other. And so it goes on to say, and every Negro, not just slave, and every Negro or slave so offending, not having a certificate as aforesaid, shall be sent to the next constable, who is hereby enjoined and required to give the said Negro 20 lashes on his bare back, well laid on, and so sent home to his said master, mistress, or overseer. And it is further enacted by the authority aforesaid that if any Negro, notice, we're not just talking about slaves, if any Negro or other slave shall presume or lift up his hand in opposition against any Christian, shall for every such offense, upon due proof made thereof by the oath of the party before a magistrate, having received 30 lashes on his bare back well laid on. This law gives us a window into the reality that white people can just assert or allege that something is happening to them or to someone else, or that something is true, and they are just believed, because inherent within the American cultural situation and American institutions and the American legal system is the benefit of the doubt, the assumption of good intent, the assumption that white people are of good character and can be believed all the time. And so inherent within the legal process is the legitimacy and the validating of white suspicion, which is why the safety of non-white people, the safety of Black people inherently depends upon the way white people feel in any given moment. And so the last
Go back to that slide again, beloved, because one of the things that I do want to point out for the people that are watching, it says against any Christian. I want to be very clear how Christianity and whiteness is one and the same. There's a level of religious hierarchy that now, many Black people are Christians, and I want you to understand exactly how this religion has been used to legitimize your brutality of your ancestors.
Yeah, and if I may, because I'm going to come back to this thought, but I want to hit on exactly what you just said, because from a factual perspective, and this is not you know, our dear brother Dr. Shock Matthews' opinion at all. He's
No,
coming. He's
not at all.
You are coming at this from a factual perspective, and I think one of the pieces that was revelatory for me. Oftentimes, you can hear the idea or maybe the misnomer that African people were not Christian. And while that is true to a degree, it's not wholeheartedly true. It is known for a fact, for example, that dating back as early as the first century, people in northern Eastern Africa practiced Christianity. There were whole regions on the continent in that particular geographical area that embraced and did practice a form or some form of Christianity. The reason I'm making this distinction, though, is because once the English got involved in the transatlantic slave trade and they started endeavoring over into Western Africa, what they quickly realized is that people in that region, in the regions that they were endeavoring into, like Ghana, Togo, Mali, Benin, those countries were not Christian. They did not practice Christianity at all. That is not to say that certain people in certain regions may not have subscribed to it, but
Sure.
for the most part, people in that region, dating back to this particular period, were of different traditions, religious traditions. The Yoruba tradition, different forms of Islam, Mohammedanism, and that's named in certain ones of these laws. So much so that the laws in the latter part of the 17th century, in the late 1600s, begin to say right in the law, this law is geared toward people who are not from Christian countries. We are enslaving people who are not from Christian countries, who do not practice Christianity, which is why then you have a law like this, which is a law that was enacted in Virginia in 1667, which is a conversion law. And it's dealing with what you just named, the fact that Christianity is being used in the ethno-religious context to identify English Europeans and other non-English Europeans. It is synonymous with whiteness at this particular point in time. And so this 1667 law focuses on that, because the variable that came along with Christianity as a legal category was the benefit of Christianity. Christians could not be enslaved per English law. Well, this one law in 1667, it deals with that. And this law says, whereas some doubts have risen whether children that are slaves by birth and by the charity and piety of their owners made partakers of the blessed sacrament of baptism, should by virtue of their baptism be made free, it is enacted and declared by this grand assembly and the authority thereof, that the conferring of baptism doth not alter the condition of the person as to his bondage or freedom, that diverse masters freed from this doubt may more carefully endeavor the propagation of Christianity by permitting children, those slaves, or those of greater growth if capable, to be admitted to that sacrament. So what does this mean? This means that we can now baptize Black people who will become Christians, but it will no longer give them freedom. It no longer carries the legal benefit of freedom. So you will become baptized Black person, but this law is making it so that you will also remain enslaved.
Wow. And are we not seeing that today?
For sure.
Wow.
In an abundance of ways.
Dante. Phenomenal research, brother. Phenomenal. This is what you call and talk about in the book as what is it? Malignant what's the term I'm looking for? Malignant narcissism or
Malignant,
white.
so white malignant narcissism and and malignant diabolical psychopathy.
Absolute. And this is interesting because I love the way you made the distinction, because if you just read it, you just don't think about it. You think of slavery, you think of slaves, but you don't think, hey, wait a minute, it's not just slaves. There's a target of Negroes. Why would they use that? It's very important to really take a deep dive into the languaging of these laws,
Yeah,
and the psychopathy behind the languaging of these laws, and looking at Christianity and whiteness or white supremacy, one and the same. You can't have one without the other.
that's right. And so Christianity, then we can also understand, is a tool of psychopathic warfare
Mm.
that Christians, in this context, in the American context, based on what they have done, their actions, their attitudes, their activities, have been engaged in psychopathic warfare. Because just as that law was passed that determined who was Christian and who wasn't, we have to understand that the cultural apparatus at this point, all of this is being uh, orchestrated and enacted by Christian people.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
And I want to, if I can share the last part of that 1680 law,
Please.
because it says, and it is hereby further enacted by the authority aforesaid, that if any Negro or other slave shall absent himself from his master's service and lie hid and lurking in obscure places, committing injuries to the inhabitants, and shall resist any person or persons that shall by any lawful authority be employed to apprehend and take the said Negro, that then, in case of such resistance, in case of such resistance of what? Resistance of pedophilia, resistance of rape, resistance of murder, resistance of brutality. In case of such resistance, it shall be lawful for such person or persons to kill the said Negro or slave so lying out and resisting. And get this, Brother Matthews, and that this law be once every 6 months published at the respective county courts and parish churches within this colony. So when you go to church, you're
Wow.
hearing that you have a law that says you can murder Black people.
Yes. Yes.
You
Yes.
can
Yes.
subject them to 20 and 30 lashes on their bare backs. You can lie and say that you felt threatened or scared and have them beaten and
I
murdered.
feared for my life. Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
All of this is
Yep.
being done under the guise of white morality. White people who believe that they are moral, decent, good human beings, good people. They're enacting terrorism. They're
Wow.
orchestrating it and embedding it within the cultural construction of America, which is why then when you get to Dr. Amos Wilson and his book, Black Violence, the psychodynamics of, I have it right here, the psychodynamics of Black self-annihilation in service of white domination, he emphasizes that the result of Black on Black violence is the result of white on Black violence, and that these
Mm-hmm.
things have been taught to us. They've been embedded into our culture. We're dealing with a group of people who are psychotic in nature.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
All right. So let me stop sharing this. I'm coming back on. So as you can see, Dr. Matthews and I got into some very deep things in this interview. I'm going to drop the link in the chat. So all of you who have been watching this far can go and watch it. Go and watch this interview on your own so that you can see it and share it with other people. Please share it with folks who are in your network as well. Okay. Um, Share it with people, talk about it. Um, Feel free to go to my website and contact me and send me questions that you might have about some of the pieces, some of the content of that interview, some of the things that I'm sharing. Again, it's all located in my book, Diagnosing Whiteness and Anti-Blackness, White Psychopathology, Collective Psychosis, and Trauma in America. So should be holding it over here. Anyway, yeah, please check out the interview. Go to Amazon. The book is out today. The book launched today. It's available. Go purchase it. And again, I'll see you tomorrow at one of the live book launches that is scheduled for either 4 p.m. Pacific Standard Time or 6 p.m. Pacific Standard Time. But go check out that interview. Again, it's Dante King, me, with Dr. Phillippe Shock Matthews, Dr. Phillippe Shock Matthews. All right. I will see you all tomorrow. And I most likely won't be back on today. All right, people. See you soon. Bye-bye.